participants list out of the way and the chat as well. Okay, and the recording has started, so I can go on. Now I just hear a strange noise. Hopefully it disappears. Okay, Oleg, I see you have a hand raised. Hi, Alexander.
Okay, we have just Musio and George. They have problem with enrolling, so let's wait 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay.
They will join us.
And here we go. Okay, we're all set. So basically, this is supposed to be a refresher session for the training that took place in New York. Hopefully, you have good memories, and also please use this session as a conversation session. So let's say anything you want to add, maybe there's something you know that I'm not aware of, and vice versa. That goes for all attendees that may know that, I don't know, an Excel looks different nowadays, or there's a process in the system that is working but currently it isn't, or anything that you may feel like you want to bring up. This is the session to do so. If by any chance you want to do it through the chat, just to write through it. I'm going to look at the chat during the entire session, and also through the participants list, just in case somebody raises their hand. And this time around, instead of going through the PowerPoint slides, we're going to jump in directly into the upload file, the Excel upload file, and the system, so we can just do more of a sort of a hands-on kind of WebEx session. But before that, I'm just going to pull up on the screen, as we can see now, just the last slide. So we have the end-to-end. And I know I see some participants that weren't in the workshop, but I know you're quite aware of the process. And if by any chance I'm going too fast, just let me know. So quickly, just going through the end-to-end scenario before we jump into the Excel. A reminder, right, of what we're going to be looking at today. So we're going to spend some time on the load list. And I'm not even going to maximize the screen because I believe it's large enough for you guys to see it. So basically the update Excel load list, which occurs offline. We're going to be taking a look at that and how the fields are connected to each other, and how we're supposed to populate some fields and how others are automatically populated from other tabs in the Excel. And then, of course, eventually how this Excel has to be uploaded to TM by the TM planner. And that will automatically in Umoja create a what is called a forwarding order, and also a freight unit. Okay, and we'll refresh those terms. Yeah, I'll be asking you guys some questions as well as we go on through the WebEx to see how good your memory is, actually, as we go on. Then basically, after we've uploaded this Excel load list, and let's say everything went well, we have our forwarding order number and we have our freight unit, then eventually what we're going to be doing is the planning part, which occurs in TM. And for this, if you remember well, during the training, we had two scenarios. One for LOA, which was the equivalent to the DAP Incoterm, and one for non-LOA, which is the equivalent to the XWorks Incoterm. So the LOA scenario was mainly for the troops contributing country stage, okay, where there would be no freight forwarder. And basically, I know that this is something, and this was repeated quite a number of times, that you didn't have much more to do once the troops contributing country was in charge of planning the transportation. But again, remember that there is an option for the TM planner to manage DFOs, so it's interesting to see the process nonetheless. Now let's say we're focusing on the LOA scenario. The Umoja system will pretty much do the work for you, right? It'll create the freight orders and also assign the carriers to the FOs. Basically, what the TM planner would have to jump in and do is manage FOs or edit the FOs if necessary, if told to do so, let's say. And in the non-LOA stage, which is the one with the freight forwarder stage, that's where we have to be a little more, let's say, manual about the process. We have to go in ourselves as TM planners, select the freight units from the TM cockpit, and we're going to be doing that in the system as well. Umoja will eventually return the proposals that we're going to be selecting. We're going to be looking through that as well and see how we can manage to choose one proposal over another. Then the TM planner would select that best proposal. The system calculates the estimated charges. based on the master data that's in the system, and then would create the freight forwarding stage. So basically the TM planner would have to not really generate the SOW, but eventually understand where to find it, to be able to save it and print it, so that then it could be manually updated once in a PDF editor software. Then basically, and we'll go through this quickly, the procure freight only related to the non-LOA scenario. So here I'm moving things around. I won't make sure I don't save that. The procure freight, so remember, if we're talking about a non-LOA scenario, which is an ex-works Incoterm, eventually there would have to be a shopping cart created for freight. The shopping cart would have to be approved. And again, the solicitation, this would occur offline. The buyer would approve the PO for freight. And then eventually what it comes down to our doing here would be the TMFO manager would have to assign this actual carrier and PO to the freight order. And we saw this when we were in New York, but we'll have a quick look at how that was done in the system right now too. And then again, of course, now once we have the actual rates, actual dates, and actual carrier, we would have to eventually, the TMFO manager would have to eventually edit the FOs that were generated by us in the previous stage with the actual data. So that'll make a lot more sense once we go into the system and see that. And then finally, we would go to our execute and monitor stage, which is the last part of this WebEx session in the system too, where again, we have both scenarios, the LOA scenario and the non-LOA scenario. The one for LOA would have to be in TM. The TM planner is the one responsible for submitting the events for the troops contributing country. So we did that in New York, but we'll go over that as well now on how the TM planner updates events in TM and also uploads attachments, adds notes, creates unexpected events. So there's a number of things that can be done in this stage. Now let's say if we look at our last scenario here, the non-LOA scenario, where the freight forwarder should be the one responsible for updating events and uploading attachments in CCP. Of course, that is the case. It could be done directly by the freight forwarder, but it can also be done by the TM planner in TM by updating events and uploading attachments. So in this last scenario, both event submissions, attachments, and notes can be done by the freight forwarder and by the TM planner in TM. And as we saw in New York, and we will probably have a chance to see today, there's a conversation between the two systems, right? You can add a note, the TM planner can add a note in TM, which will be reflected in CCP and vice versa. So eventually there's a conversation between the TM planner and the freight forwarder in terms of the submission of events, the attachments that are required, and the notes that may clarify something that may come up during event submission. So basically, that's just a quick refresher of the end-to-end scenario, the scenarios we saw for LOA, non-LOA, and the steps that we would have to take in the system depending on each of these scenarios, right, in each of these cases. So without further ado, let's just go and take a look at the Excel sheet. So we're basically going to be starting from the top left here, the beginning of our end-to-end scenario, the load list. Okay, so we're updating this Excel load list, and according to the last Excel that we've received here in Valencia, this is what it would look like. So I'm just going to minimize a tad here so we can see all the fields. And eventually, this is the last Excel. I'm just going to take a quick look also at the chat, just in case anyone is trying to cry out for help here. Okay. Nobody there, and no hands raised. Perfect. So basically, if this is the last Excel sheet and we're all okay with this last one, we're just going to start navigating through it so we understand how this works. So basically, we have a legend on the side here that tells us what each of the colors represent in the Excel. The pink for the information retrieved from Summary tab, and we'll take a look at the tabs now. Then we have a different color pattern here for information derived from the general cargo list, information retrieved from location tab, information retrieved from TCC mission tab, and then last but not least, the green color, which reflects the manual entry or mandatory fields. So in a sense, if we take a look at this Excel, there's really no green colors that we can look at here. But now we're going to see which ones are the mandatory ones. In this case, would be the ones that we would have to manually enter in the Summary tab. So let's take a look at that Summary tab. If you guys look at the bottom, we have, remember, several more tabs. The one for Summary, the one for General Cargo List. Now, I believe in the latest version of this Excel to upload, the General Cargo List tab will not be there. So eventually, I think the Excel will also get information from the General Cargo List, but I don't think it's part of the actual Excel that you're going to be uploading. So this is what the latest version that I have looks like, where we have our General Cargo Load List and the information that is here in terms of vehicles, containers, trailers, and so on, that is added here in detail, will only be summarized in terms of quantity and also prices, ranges, volumes. Anything that we see here at the top here, lanes, total area, volume, and so on, will be summarized at the bottom of each line, and that's the information that is going to be found in the Summary tab, as we can see here. And this is a tab that I can make a little bigger. Here, we move it to the right, and we see here that the item containers, 76, lane meters for the containers as well, all summarized in this sheet, which eventually should be taken, this information should be taken directly from the cargo load list. Then if we move to the right a little more, we have our reference location tab, where we have data that is linked to the forwarding upload tab all the way at the right, and also linked to the Summary tab. And we'll see that when we start changing the locations in the Summary tab, eventually those cells are going to be retrieving the data from this tab here. So let's say if I'm writing here Toronto, in the Summary tab, eventually what I'm telling the Excel is that the location is going to be Woodbridge Factory. So if I go back to the Summary tab and we see one of the either cargo collection point or final destinations, these are the locations that eventually will be taken from the reference tab here at the bottom. So if I'm looking at Jakarta in this case, I would be able to find Jakarta here. Okay, let's get rid of this, and we don't need this one anymore. Okay, let's get back to my Excel. For example, if I wrote Jakarta here, I should be able to find the location, and eventually this is what's going to populate my final list. So by adding this specific location in the Summary tab, this data, or these digits and letters, are going to be reflected in my final tab, which is the Forwarding Upload tab. So let's take a look. Jakarta will show under Summary, and there it is. But when we type Jakarta here, we'll see that this is the data that's going to be translated here. So Jakarta, and here's the data that we're talking about. So by changing the location in the Summary tab, we're going to be changing the location, the source location here in the Excel. And we're going to start playing around with that to see how one affects the other. And last but not least, we also have a reference tab for the troops contributing country, where we see here a list of countries like Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, and the BP number that represents them. So in this case, if we go back to the Summary, and we have Indonesia written here under the TCC cells, if we go to the Forwarding Upload tab, we can see that that's going to be the one that's going to be represented here with the member country shipper. So this information here is taken directly from the Reference TCC tab. So far, as I've gone through some of the tabs, just as a refresher, I'm taking a look again at the chat. Nothing new there. If anyone wants to speak up at any time, please do so. Just raise your hand, and I'll make sure that you can speak up. If not, I'm just going to move on. So basically, let's take again a look at the Forwarding Upload Excel and the cells themselves and see the information. So again, we're looking at the pink color here. Should be information that is taken from the Summary tab. So we don't directly edit this field here. If we want to change the source location, we would have to go to the Summary tab and change it. That will automatically, by adding Jakarta in the Summary tab, populate this field source location. The same thing will happen for destination location by writing Kalemi in the Summary tab here in the final destination. What we're going to have is the destination location here populated. Again, all this data is taken from the Reference Location tab. Now, we have our pickup from and delivery to dates. Now, again, you do not edit the dates directly here in the Excel. If you go to the Summary, you would do it right from the Excel itself here. Now, I know there's one more version of the Excel that has the dates added here, and you would just have to add them directly into the Summary tab, but I was testing that this morning and it wasn't generating forwarding orders, so I'm still sticking to this version because I know it works. So for this particular case, we would be adding the date to the top one, and eventually it would populate the rest of the fields here. For example, if instead of the 30th, I'm going to change it to the 29th and click on OK, it should change all the other dates to the 29th. The same thing will happen with the latest one here for March 14th. It changes all other dates. What does this tell me? And this is information that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the latest details that we have, you would be filling in one single Excel sheet per forwarding order. Let's say you want to create one forwarding order with one specific set of dates. Okay, so we're not going to be combining different dates or different Incoterms. This Excel is for one single set of dates and one single Incoterm. And if we want to change the dates or change the Incoterm, we wouldn't be adding another line with different information in this Excel. We would actually have to be creating a brand new Excel with a different Incoterm and different dates, and even different locations if that's the case. Okay, basically I remember that in New York we were just adding what we call the forwarding group, where we were adding numbers like number 1 for the first forwarding order, number 2 to generate a second forwarding order, number 3, and so on. So in one single Excel we could add all that information, and just by adding the numbers in the forwarding order, it would generate, in the Excel, sorry, it would generate forwarding orders. So basically now we're just creating one Excel per forwarding order that we want to generate in TM. So if we move on down the list, and before we generate the actual file that we need to upload, we can see that we have the cargo load list items, which will be defaulted, the same as the product. This information is here, which is always the summary that is taking the data from the tab in the summary, which is also taking the data from the general cargo load list. And if we keep moving on to our next field in red, which would be the equivalent here to the green one, the manual entry mandatory fields, the base BTD reference or MOU reference is also fed from the tab summary. So we would go back to our summary and have our MOU reference there as well. So this data, it would be added there and fed directly into this sheet here. The same thing, now here we go with the Incoterm. In this case, we're adding our Incoterms here. So if we wanted to change this, we would just add the AP in this case, and that eventually would have to go all the way down to the rest of the Excel. So we have the Incoterm that we want to add to this Excel. So basically, as I know this is not yet the final Excel, I believe in the latest version, all these fields in red are going to be derived directly from the summary list. So you would just have to edit the fields that are in red, like for example, MONUSCO, the TCC, cargo collection point, and final destination. And in the newest Excel, you also have the dates and other information like the base BTD reference and the Incoterm. Then we have the TCC, Troops Contributing Country, name of the country here, Indonesia. Again, remember the information that it's coming from is, again, the reference TCC mission tab at the end. That's also linked to the member country. And here we go. The last would be the mission MONUSCO, which is also taken from the summary list. And then the receiving plant, which is CD10. So basically, the way the Excel works, you would have to populate barely anything. Only in the summary list we have the fields that are in red. Now I also have the final version of the Excel, so we can take a look at it and compare what they look like. The only thing is, as I was testing it this morning and it wasn't working, I sort of decided not to use that one instead. And let me see if I have it here available. And if not, we'll just keep working with what we have, and maybe at the end of the session we can take a look at it. So basically, if anyone has any questions, now would be the time to ask them before I move on. Okay, so I'm just going to leave a couple of seconds. If no one wants to speak up or raise the hand, I'm just going to move on. In the meantime, I'm also going to look for that latest Excel so we can take a look and reference them. So basically, when we're done adding the information in this Excel for COE, all we have to do is click on the button here where you see the airplane, the truck, car, and boat. So basically, it's as easy as just clicking on this button, and that will generate the text file that we're going to need to upload, and also a different version of the Excel that we were just looking at. So wherever it is that you have the actual Excel file saved, so let's say this file is saved, I don't know, in your desktop under a folder that's called Excel Upload, that's where these other Excels and text files are going to be saved as well. So if you're going crazy looking for them, just know that these Excel files and text files that were generated by clicking on this button here on the Excel are going to be saved in the same place that you have saved this Excel itself. So basically, when you're going to upload into TM, you'll just have to look there. So now that we have already generated the files that we'll need to upload, that's when we can go now and log in to TM. So while I log into Moja, I'm going to check the chat, and also if anyone has a question, now is the time to ask it.
Yes, this is Leandro. I don't know if we could maybe, as you were saying, show to them the latest version. I mean, as you said, it's the same one, but just in case they want to see that everything is populated from the summary tab, right? Maybe we can show it directly from the email from Nicole, or I have it in my desktop in case you want me to show it directly, or you can just open the email from Nicole.
Sure. So actually, if I can just share, make you the presenter for a quick second there, and maybe you can share it.
Because I have it open, so we can
Okay,
just have a look
perfect.
at the.
Yeah. In the meantime, I can log into Umoja here. So I'm just going to make you the presenter now. Okay, hold on. And I believe now we should see your screen. Let's see.
I'm not yet the presenter.
Okay. Now you should be.
All right, so let me share my desktop. All right, so I think now I'm sharing the my screen, right? So you should be able to see my screen. And I don't know if Alex or anybody else from MovCon, maybe you have more updated information about the Excel file. Okay, but this is the one we received as the latest version. Okay, and it's very similar to what Brian explained. The only difference is that we don't have this cargo list. So if we have a look at the different tabs, we have the information we will populate, but then in the summary tab, we have more details that are populated in red, and the meaning is that these fields populated in red will automatically go to our Excel file. Like for example, we were saying that the MOU, the reference number, the Incoterm, the pickup, and delivery dates. So all these fields that in the version Brian was showing were manually populated in the Excel. Now with the latest version, they are coming from the summary list. Okay, but the idea behind everything is the same. Okay, so in the end, we will have all the different data populated in the final Excel file, and then we can just click on the generate TXT and Excel file to have our files to have them uploaded into Umoja. Okay. So that's the latest version we received from the project team. I don't know, maybe Alex or anybody from MovCon. Do you have any other updated information from the project team? Yeah. Otherwise, we can continue on doing the upload into Umoja.
Okay. Thanks, Leandro. Thanks for having it available there. Yes, leaving some time for any questions, but so far there seems to be nothing. So I'm just going to continue. So that whenever you want, Leandro, you can just, there you go. I think you did it already. Okay, very good. So I'm going to share my desktop now as well. Okay, so we should be fine. And anytime you want to intervene, Leandro, I know you're in another room, so just please do so. Okay, let's see if I can move my Umoja screen over. Okay, I'm just trying to drag over the Umoja screen. For some reason, it's not letting me. Just give me a couple of seconds. Okay, just Umoja was acting up. Okay, and I think I'm back here. Okay, so what I'm basically doing now, and I think everyone should be okay in following me so far, I'm just going to make sure that I'm still recording this session, because going back and forth from presenter has probably changed some things here. And yes, so it's still recording. Okay, so I'm logging into the training environment. For those of you that were in the workshop in New York, you quite remember how to do this. And again, what we were doing in New York that I believe has changed was how we were uploading the Excel so far. So now we just have to go directly into the NWBC link and just click on that, so we can forget completely about the link below, and just double click on NWBC, and hopefully it'll launch the page quick enough. Here you go. And once again, and of course this is only for the training environment, we're clicking on NWBC again. Let me maximize this screen. And the first thing we're going to do is now upload the generated file that we just did by clicking on the button with the airplane and the boat there. So what we'll do, of course, remember that you had 3 different tabs that we could navigate through, and this is quite important, even though I know we usually go through this quite fast because we're just going directly into the link that we need to upload. But remember, these 3 are quite important, because if we click on the first one, forwarding order management, what we have here is we can either click on the overview forwarding order to search for our forwarding order with some other data like creation date or who created it, or a bunch of different fields that will allow us to find our forwarding order number. The same goes for this link here below where it says display forwarding order. Remember, if you do know your forwarding order number, you can just simply click on this link. And this is just a refresher as well. That's why this session is called a refresher on what these hyperlinks were giving us, right? So this one where it says display forwarding order at the bottom here, the one I just clicked on, will take us to this window. And here's where we would add our forwarding order number, if we know it by heart. For example, if it were this one, and we would just click on continue, and that would take us directly into our forwarding order. If by any chance we didn't know exactly the forwarding order, but had some details or some data that we could use, we would click on overview forwarding order. And that would take us to a different looking screen where we would have a number of fields that we can use to find the same thing, our forwarding order number. So remember this. If we scroll down, we would have all the results of our search down below. So in this case, again, this hyperlink can be used to just search for one single forwarding order. But if you see, all the other fields will help us add information that we may have if we don't have the forwarding order number itself. Okay, so we can go back to the tab Forwarding Order Management, and the link that we want here is this one, Mass Upload of Forwarding Order. So this is what we're going to click on to upload the file that we just generated. Now while this window loads, let me just take a quick look at the chat. And nothing there yet, and no hands raised under the participants list. Nope, okay. So I'm just going to continue. And here's our screen where we're going to upload this form. First thing we would do is execute in foreground. That'll already remove some of the elements below. Remember that what we're uploading is a text file, not an Excel file. So we make sure that we select this text file button, and under the file name, we just click on the matchbox, and we can look for the generated files, which would be a text file or an Excel file. So basically, when the next window loads, like this one, where we would have to go is right here where it says Import from Native File System. It's kind of like an arrow in a white piece of paper. So we would click on this icon. That will automatically open the files that we can look for. So the drop-down will let us select wherever we have our file in. In my case, it's H because it's easy access. Umoja will then ask you if you want to allow access. You say yes. And basically, here is what my folder would look like. I have a bunch of different files that I already generated, and I know work just to save time and not have to troubleshoot. And basically, you could select any of the text files here. Remember, we're looking at a text document. So any of the ones with the text document are what we're looking for. One for DAP, one for XWorks. So in this case, let's just select one for XWorks, since that will allow us to view how the system generates the freight orders on its own, and also how we do it ourselves. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have to do it ourselves for the XWorks. We'll choose this one, and here's our file. Now, nothing has happened until I actually go to Menu, Program, and Execute. This is the way I'll execute the actual file that I'm uploading, the text file. I'm not even going to test run it. I'm just going to go with what I have here, which is this file. I worked perfectly fine these past few days, so should have no issue now. And this has changed from what we saw in New York. Now automatically the forwarding order number shows to the left. Before we had to scroll to the right to find it. Now it's right here. So I'm just going to take quick note of that number. And remember that this is the one I did for XWorks. Okay, the Incoterm XWorks, which would be the non-LOA scenario for COE. If we scroll to the right, we see that we have all the details that we have added into our Excel. And basically the status shows us here, green light, which means it's all okay, and some information icons in case we had an error. We could see what the error was. Now we could just go back. And let's say now I want to upload another file, because all I did was spend my morning generating these files, and now all I want to do is just upload them all. So eventually I could just go back to my matchbox here, and now since I already have one file, which should show here, so there's no mistake made, you can just simply select that file and delete it. Okay, so it disappears from your list and you don't make a mistake. And now I can just go back again and look for my DAP or LOA scenario. Select it, choose OK, and then again do the same process. Menu, Program, Execute. And that should now generate my second forwarding order number. And this one is for the scenario LOA or DAP Incoterm. Okay, so I'm just taking note of this number and ensuring I know it's the DAP scenario. And now we'll see in both cases how in one of the cases for XWorks, the freight orders do not generate automatically, while the ones for DAP do generate automatically. So now, again, I'm just going to wait a couple of seconds, see if anyone is trying to reach out. Does anybody have a question so far? I see at least 11 attendees, but everyone seems to be quite quiet. Okay, so we do have a hand raised, and I believe it's you, Oleg.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So, few issues.
Okay.
First, when you see this freight forwarding number, it should be
Yes.
possibility to click on this number, and then it should open the freight forwarding. Not just to take a note of this, but to click on it.
Yes, if actually, I'm just clicking on it now. I was going to go there in a second. You see what I just did on the screen?
Yeah, and before you are saying that you should click menu, and then on the menu you should do one step before.
Yes.
Before the execute. So on the right side there is execute.
Yes, as well.
So you can do this right side execute.
Absolutely, yes. There's more than one way.
Yes. Okay. And when we are enrolling right now to the system, we are using just for the training Umoja 1, 2, 3. But then from today it should be alive, and we should have our unique passport.
When you log into production, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Now this is just for the training environment, but when you log into production, you should just do it with your own username and password.
Okay, and one more issue, that when we are enrolling to Umoja, it should be very clear instruction which line to be used, because there are so many lines for the training, for the other checking, but we need to know just exactly what line to use to enroll to the proper, let me say, production system.
Okay, well, I haven't yet gone into production for the system just because I wasn't sure it was working appropriately. But when you do so, all you do is click on the icon for TM. You don't have to go through the list that you see here, right? You wouldn't have to select from a list like this one. This is only for the training.
Yes, when you're clicking on TM,
yes.
you still have different locations. Because I tried to test on Friday, and I was not able. The real system, I was not able.
Sorry, this is
sure,
Leandro. Maybe we can show Brian what we discovered this week, because we realized that the links for production were already open. So, I mean, whatever we have been showing to you in December and also today, it's how to access training environment. Okay, but now that we are talking about production, and we realize that the option in production is already open. So maybe, Brian, we can also show to them how that's done in production, or whenever you feel it fits in the session, we can also show to them how to access TM but in production. I mean, for us it's not working yet, but at least they will know how to reach the icons to access TM, but in production and not in training. Okay, so whenever you can, maybe later or now, or whenever you want, Brian, we can also show to them.
Sure. I mean, we could show them now. I'm just thinking, based on time, there's only like 40 minutes left to the what was planned to be the session, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make it all the way to the end. But definitely, let's see if we can leave it for the end and just go into the production system. Okay, Leandro?
Okay.
Thank you. And yes, any other suggestions in terms of how the interface should look or what you would rather see? These are things that, of course, I can't change now in this refresher and in the training. These are things that maybe would be better to bring up to either Babacar or Emma or someone over there that can make a change into the system, because basically I know that we have a wish list of the way things should look or we would want them to look in the system, but there's really nothing I can do now during this refresher in terms of what something should look like. I know that it could be made easier, but there's really nothing I can do during the training in terms of how these things should be changed. Okay, so I just took note of the forwarding order numbers just because I like to do so. But we can definitely, as we saw before, just click on the forwarding order number itself, and that also works like a hyperlink that takes us directly into that particular forwarding order. Okay, so basically, if let's say I'm going to upload this file again or execute this file that I have here, if instead of going to menu, program, and execute, I go to execute, because of course there's always one more way around the way you do things here, you could just do that instead, and that again will generate again my new number, which I can just simply click on here, and that will take me to my forwarding order directly. Okay, so in Umoja, just like in BI or ECC, there's always a different way to doing things or a different approach of how you can go from one screen to another. So again, what we're looking at here is the scenario for LOA, and the way we know this, remember, we're always looking at the top left of the screen, display forwarding order, and COE, and this is how we know that what we're looking at exactly. Remember, usually the window loads showing you the document flow tab, and from there the leading document that we're looking at is at the top and all the ones that are linked to it across the bottom. If you don't know what you're looking at, always look at the top and see that this is the number for the forwarding order, display forwarding order for COE. If you look at the freight unit number, which is right below, and it says it right here, COE LOA freight unit. So it tells you all the information you need to know. Just by looking at this, I know that this is a COE and it's an LOA scenario. Below the tab for document flow, we have the list of the equipment that we have uploaded into the Excel. And here it is. And again, remember that we could always navigate through the different tabs to see different information that could be critical to what we're looking for. Under the general data, we have some information regarding the forwarding order data, the dates, the order date, the Incoterm itself here, and again, our items, the good values. And again, remember, these values are just for the training environment. They should be accurate in production. In the Business Partner tab, also remember we had some of the information related to the ordering party and also the shipper, consignee. So here's where we would see the business partner related to this particular forwarding order. The locations and dates and times tab will show us exactly that. The locations, dates, and times from the source location and the destination location, the exact address and information, the same thing for the destination information here. We have the actual route, ordered route, the charges tab as well here. Again, there should be nothing yet because I believe the freight orders have not been generated by the system yet. And now some of the tabs that were also important, the notes and attachments, but these will become more important depending on the document we're looking at. So remember, depending on what document we're looking at here, in this case we're looking at the forwarding order, these tabs will give us a number of data and number of critical data related to the forwarding order. But if we click on the freight unit here, we'll have a different set of data that we can look at. And once the freight orders are generated, they will also appear below, and we can also navigate through them and see through different tabs the different information that they provide. Also, very importantly, we'll see as the freight orders are generated that by selecting one and going to tabs like, for example, attachments and notes, these will be directly linked to the actual hold on one second, to the actual events that we have to submit here. Okay, the system went a little crazy there. All right, and then again, remember the folder here at the end will display all the tabs. Remember, if you can't see them all in one glimpse, you have all the tabs here on the side. So again, now let's see if the freight orders have generated in this DAP scenario, and if not, we can always just go into the XWorks forwarding order number and go to the cockpit and generate them ourselves. Okay, so this was the case for LOA. We can always just close the window or minimize it. In this case, I'm just going to close it. return back to our screen here. And now if I wanted to look for my other forwarding order number, and that's why it was important for me to take note of it. Let's say I generated 15 of them, and now I wanted to search for one in particular. If I had taken note of them, it would be much easier for me to find them directly. So we could go directly to one of the tabs at the top, and now I would ask you guys to interact, but I haven't seen much interaction so far during the WebEx session. But for a quick second, if someone could tell me where I would go to process the forwarding order of freight unit for the XWorks Incoterm, which would be the non-LOA scenario. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to intervene. If not, I'll just tell you myself. All right, so I'm going to continue. So here's where we go to our tab here for planning, and where we would go to our transportation cockpit. Now in this training environment, we could definitely generate the freight orders for both the DAP scenarios and the XWorks scenarios, but we're only going to work on the XWorks scenarios, which is what we would do in a real life scenario anyway. So this is what the screen looks like for the transportation cockpit. If we remember, we select COE non-LOA, which is the one we're going to generate the transportation proposals for. Click on continue. And now once the system loads, we should all be familiar with this page. If we remember what this page represents, it shows us the freight that we're supposed to get the transportation proposals for, right here in this column. Again, the freight orders, once we've already selected the transportation proposals that the system is going to return, will show here. And then we really didn't spend much time on the other fields, like for example the bottom right, where we would be able to actually see the stages or legs in a map as well. But let's go and generate our transportation proposal. But let's take a look and remember that this small screen here can be maximized by clicking on the maximize button, which makes it quite easier to find what we're looking for. Now again, we don't know our freight unit number, but we do know the forwarding order number, which also appears here. So if we maximize the screen, that will make it a lot easier to navigate through these fields. We can always go to the search box here and write our forwarding order number. So in this case, it's 215-346. And that should, at least the system should highlight, and there it is, that forwarding order number. So I know that this is the number that has generated the freight unit that now I'm going to create the transportation proposal for. So this freight unit that we have at the top, we first have to select it. And again, what does this freight unit represent is everything that we can ship together. Okay, everything that we can ship together, meaning it has the same source location, same destination location, and even remember we could combine freight units, because some of these freight units, since they have the same destination location, they're within the 7 days of the dates that were added in terms of arrival and departure. So remember, you guys can combine these freight units as long as they, of course, can be shipped together, because that's what the freight unit concept meant. In this case, we're only processing this freight unit here. We select our line and we click on transportation proposals. This will also take us to the next window where we'll have a list of generated possible proposals for transportation. Now, while this loads, anything to add? If any attendee would like to intervene, now is the moment while the system is loading. Okay, so far we have 11 attendees. I believe a couple more have joined while I was speaking. Okay, we have an error here, so let me just do that one again. Okay, and I'll go a bit quicker in this case. So transportation cockpit. because we're looking for all these forwarding orders for the scenario non-LOA that we still have to generate transportation proposals for. Now, I know usually at this time of the afternoon, the training environment is quite slower. So let me maximize the window that's going to show me the freight units. Here we go. Again, I know it was 346, so I know it's this top one. I don't have to look for it again. And let's see if this time around we're luckier with the transportation proposal and we don't get an error. Again, it is quite slow at this time. Hopefully I don't get another error message. And yes. Okay, very good. Let's see now if I can find and do that again just one last time. If not, we'll go looking for the DAP scenario if by any chance the training environment is not going to work properly. Instead of wasting our time doing it several times, I'll give it one last shot. So again, we'll do the process again, and hopefully this time it works. Get our freight unit here. And select transportation proposals one last time. Hopefully this one does work. And here it is. Okay, so third time's the charm. All right, perfect. We have our transportation proposals here. Again, remember the way this screen looked. You could collapse all these proposals and just see how many the system is showing you. We can't scroll down any further, so in this case we have 20 transportation proposals. Again, we can uncollapse and see for each of these proposals the amount of legs that should be generated, right? The amount of freight orders that will be generated. So remember, a freight order is a specific leg, right? From A to B, B to C, C to D, and so on. So in this case, our transportation proposal here, our main leg will be by C. And if we scroll down, we can see that for some of them, actually we could see, or maybe not, instead of the main transportation proposal being by C, we could probably see some by air, but I know that it's been arranged in a way that, see, C is the one that shows first, and here you go. We have also a transportation proposal by air. So the TM planner would have to spend some time here looking at what is the best proposal to select. Now, I know that this is only in a sense for generating data, because eventually the fact that you select one transportation proposal or another is going to make no difference, in the sense that once the freight forwarder is the one providing the actual carrier, that's the one we're going to go with. But nonetheless, the TM planner is supposed to select the best proposal here, so that in this sense we can have the master data itself, not the actual one, but the estimated charges. We can have a sort of a database of estimated charges that eventually down the line will be, there'll be a report extracted, and it will compare the data between our estimated charges and our actual charges, so that the UN can understand where the differences between what we consider to be the estimated charges and what the actual charges are. So down the line, we can save on cost on transportation. So basically, when we continue with this screen, and again, still nothing in the chat and no one has raised their hand so far, I'm moving on. You can scroll to the right and also make sure that when you select one of these columns, you can sort by ascending or descending, so you can always have the shortest distance or the longest distance first, instead of just having your transportation proposal 1 here. Or you could go by cost, duration of the transportation. So let's say in this case, we have descending. So we want to have the largest duration at the top. See, our proposal 9 is now our best proposal. Or, of course, if we don't want to do that, we want to have the shortest duration, the 25 minutes. Again, of course, remember, this is the training environment. It would be the option by air, which is transportation 13. So basically, you can take some time to navigate and decide which one would be the best proposal here. But what's important to understand is that these digits here, these are the freight orders. And you see as the window loads, it says road freight order, and it gives you the number for this freight order. And it tells you from where, source location to destination location, the departure date, arrival date. So this is quite important. If you go down the line and you just hover over any of the numbers, it'll give you the information related to that freight order. And again, remember, a freight order is a leg. So eventually, the first leg would be from our source location to Jakarta Airport. Then the airplane would go from Jakarta to Goma Airport. And then from Goma Airport to the mission, we would do the leg by truck. So eventually, let's say I can select this proposal because it suits me best. We can accept planning, but again, remember, you have to first click on the checkbox, accept planning. And here we go. As I was mentioning before, to the right side of our screen, we would have our proposals here. And again, until we save our proposals, we have done absolutely nothing. Okay, so in this case, we don't have any of these freight orders generated yet. It's not until we save these that eventually they will actually become the freight orders that are linked to this document. So basically, to go back to that, you could simply go to your freight order number here, if I'm not mistaken, the forwarding order number, to see our document. Or you could just simply navigate to the freight order. Here, let me move that one away, by clicking on the freight order number here directly. So I can just click on this one and a new window loads, showing me the freight order details exactly. Okay, so again, remember at the top, display COE, planned freight order, non-LOA scenario. So this is how you know what you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at our freight order. And before I clicked on my forwarding order number, which is the screen I'm showing you now, just so that you can see that our forwarding order number now leads because it's the document I'm looking at. And right below it, we have all the freight orders that are linked to it. Okay, so basically I could just minimize this screen or just close it and work directly from this freight order. So nothing to add here. Again, I'm just a quick look at the chat, and I'm going through this part quite quickly as I see no one seems to have any questions or no one else is intervening. What I wanted to cover now I know this is in XWorks scenario, but as we said before, we could take a look at the tabs that now become important here under the freight order. And these are the tabs for execution, notes, and attachments. Now I know there's still steps before we go into the submission of events. We could probably go and assign the actual freight PO, and that's probably what we'll do. But again, you see now that as we were looking at the forwarding order number at the beginning of the WebEx session, we didn't have anything or any information that was valuable to us under the execution tab. And we can actually do that now, just so we can see the difference. If we go back to document flow, we can see our freight unit and our forwarding order. If I click on the forwarding order number, and I'm going to go to the same tab if it's actually there. So we see we have charges for the freight order and charges for the forwarding order here, notes and attachments. So in this case, we just have the notes and attachments, but we don't have the execution tab that we have up top. So every single document will display different tabs. Remember that. And always pay attention to what document you're looking at. So basically, I'm still with my forwarding order. But again, before we continue into how we can submit events, what we have to look at is the actual business partner tab, just to ensure and see. What we want to look at here is that for this specific leg, and I'm just showing you one specifically, one freight order. We can look at the forwarding order, or we can look at each individual freight order. But what's important here is to understand this, that under the business partner tab, we had the actual leg and who is the carrier for this leg. And in this sense, and this is an ex-works scenario, or non-LOA scenario, our carrier is defaulted in the system by a dummy carrier, as we can see here. So we have not yet assigned who will be the actual carrier, because so far we have not yet generated the SOW document. We have not created our shopping cart for freight, so we don't have the actual charges. We don't have any of the actual information that the freight forwarders are going to provide to us. So how do we go to, now that I mentioned the SOW, how would we go and see our SOW document? If, remember, you click on the folder all the way to the right, remember that we have some more tabs that we haven't seen or that are not visible, but they are always visible when clicking on the folder. We go to Output Management, and here we go. Under Output Management, if we select the line that relates to the freight order that we're looking at, and we go to Document Preview here at the bottom, remember that we were able to see our SOW document. This is the one that we would either print, save. I'm not sure exactly what the process would be in real life when you work with these documents, but again, remember that even though this document is saved as a PDF, you can always edit this document and then upload it again with the actual changes. So this is where you would find your SOW. So again, just a quick refresher. The SOW is found by going first to the freight order. That's what we're looking at. It's the actual leg. Clicking on the folder, Output Management tab, because we can't see them all in one shot. As you see now, we only see 3. Selecting the line, clicking on the tab here, Document Preview, and here's where our SOW document is found. Okay, so basically now what we can do is, since we're not interested in the whole process of the freight, we can see that, let's say, we can assign them, or maybe since we're kind of short on time, and I have you there, Leandro, listening, I believe, still. Should we show that part as well for the freight, or move on maybe to submission of events?
As you wish, but I mean, we can always change manually, right, the execution status to ready for execution, and then we can show it TM-CCP. I think that would be the most interesting part, right, for them.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. So then I'll basically just execute it manually. So as Leandro was mentioning, since it's not something that you would be doing as TM planners, right? The part of the freight would not be something that you would be doing yourself. So in this sense, and also correct me if I'm wrong, Leandro, we would go to manually edit this part. I mean, let's just go so we can see the status and how it changes.
Yes. So I think there's a button, right, to in the execution status button. I mean, right now with its execution status not started, right, because we haven't assigned, right, the carrier, right. So now it should be the solicitation process to conclude all the solicitation and award the carrier, and afterwards they'll do the assign carrier and the freight PO. But I think we can change it manually by using the execution status button, right?
Exactly, right? So as Leandro was saying, under the tab status for this exact freight order, we have the execution status not started yet. So eventually, why this is important is that we can't start submitting events until the execution status is ready for execution. So As long as this is the case, the freight forwarder, let's say if submitting events in CCP, would not be able to view the freight orders that have been generated. So in this case, since we're not going to go through the steps of creating the shopping cart for freight and linking the actual freight PO to the actual freight orders, we're just going to go and kind of cheat a little bit here. And we go to our execution status button. Now again, I'm not sure you guys can even do this in production anyway, but we can just do that quickly here. So again, I just clicked on edit, and here we can just go set to ready for transportation execution. And now that our status has changed, this means that we can now proceed to submit events in CCP and in TM. So basically we can save. And we'll first start with the event submission in TM. If you guys can remember, and I can also bring back the PowerPoint here just very quickly, we would be in our last stage, which would be the last section here. Let's say what we did skip was this part here for the assignment of carrier and PO. And we're going into this scenario, the freight forwarder stage, non-LOA. And what we're going to look at first is what the TM Planner would do in terms of updating events and uploading attachments. And if we have enough time, since we're kind of running short on time, we can also see how that is viewed in CCP. And maybe we can also show, as Leandro was saying at the beginning of the session, to go into show you guys how that would look in production as well. I know it's many things.
The only thing, Brian, is...
Yes.
Sorry. The only thing is that if we don't assign the carrier, right, it won't appear in the carrier collaboration portal, right? So we can only do that in TM unless we assign a proper carrier, because I think we only changed the status but didn't assign the carrier.
No, if we look at exactly under business partner, we'll still see that we have the dummy carrier here. So eventually we would have to, we can add it manually. In a sense, once the carrier is assigned, and I know this was something that we also discussed, and thanks for the reminder, Leandro, is that once we have already assigned a carrier and we move on, I know having discussions with you guys in the class was very interesting because we learned tons in terms of what can happen in real life and what happens if the carrier changes halfway through the process. So these things can be changed individually. So let's say the TM Planner could go into each individual freight order and change the carrier manually. Under business partner, we can just either select from this matchbox a new carrier, because let's say something happened with the old carrier and now we need a new one, or just assign the same one to all of them. So throughout the process, we can always just add or change the actual carrier. So it's a good thing that you reminded me of that, because as we have here, the dummy carrier would not allow us to start submitting events. Now, I'm not sure if we even have any probably here manually that we have generated. If not, we can always click on the matchbox and find one here. Okay, so in this case, we could always select one of the ones we have here. I'm not sure which one. Here you go. This would probably be a good one here. This one, Kuehne+Nagel. So here we go. Manually did this. So eventually what I did under the freight order number, went to the tab Business Partner and changed manually the carrier. So of course, in a perfect scenario, you would have the carrier assigned already, because it would have been assigned by the freight PO linked to the freight order number, and you would already have a carrier assigned. But let's say these can be changed individually. There could be a different carrier for each leg as well. So these are things that we have to keep in mind. So we have our carrier number here. We can always save, and now this will become the actual carrier, and now we can start submitting events. And when we log into CCP, when Kuehne+Nagel logs into CCP, they will be able to view, because now this freight order is assigned to this specific freight forwarder. Okay, so basically, since what we do have here are those TM planners that could be submitting events in TM, what we're going to look at quickly is the three tabs that are basically the most important ones in terms of submitting events. So now that we have our carrier assigned here, we would go to execution, and that's exactly where we have our list of events to submit. Now again, the list of events that show both in CCP and in TM are the events that are called expected. So any of the events that you see here are those that should be reported and those that should be expected throughout the entire transportation process. So each one of these freight orders will have the list of expected events here. We could simply report the expected events that are present here, or we can insert new ones, but TM will take any new inserted event as an unexpected event. So every time we insert a new event, even if it's one of the events that is already reflected here, automatically TM will take that as an unexpected event. If we're just reporting the events that are shown here, it's as simple as selecting the line and clicking on Report Event. This will automatically change the status of this event to reported event and expected. We can make any of the changes by adding the actual date event here or manually entering it here in the line. As we can see, the same for the time. We can enter an event reason code, and we can even add a note if we want to link to the actual line itself here for loading begin. So here's where we would insert a note. But usually you can't insert a note in expected events until you have actually first submitted one. Now once we have submitted, let's say we could submit the first one, we would be able to add a note in this case. For unexpected events, it's a different story. Another tab, and I know this is going quite quickly, but at least we're refreshing your memory in terms of submitting events, and maybe I can leave room another 10-20 minutes to look at some of the things that we wanted to show you. The Notes tab works as a sort of a inbox where you can have let's say conversation, or you can address any remarks that you want to address to the freight forwarder that's going to also submit events in CCP. If let's say this is a two-man show here, so we can insert the notes by selecting the text type. In this case, we could always select remarks, the language, if it's going to be internal to see only in TM, or external so that the freight forwarder can see it as well, and add any of the remarks here in the content line. For example, in this case, nothing to report, of course, one of those perfect scenarios, and it's not until you click on save that you would eventually have who created it, and the system will just return who created it and the date and time it was done. So you could always just select the same line, click on the bin, and remove that note. But whatever it is that we add here will also be visible in CCP by the freight forwarder. Another tab that is important as well was the attachment tab, that I'm not sure we got to spend too much time on that in New York, but here's where we would be submitting or attaching any files, any documents that are critical to any of these events that we're submitting. So let's say we submit a particular event that requires a particular document. After the submission of this event, we could always attach this document by simply dragging the file here where it says drop files, or by going here to the insert button and selecting the type of let's say document that we want to insert, whether it's a file in this case or something else. The description itself, so let's say for example proof of delivery, anything that will allow us to understand what it is we're attaching. We can browse, and again always browse and search for whatever document you want to. In this case I'm just going to add a text file just to make it quick. I don't think it even allows a text file. It does. Okay, so that would be the file attached, and again with the description linked to any of the events that we have submitted here. So let's say I could save this, have this attachment saved here, and linked to any of the events that we have just submitted here. So basically you can do the same thing again. You can always just select the line and delete the attachment as well here. So quickly, those were the basics in terms of submitting events, attachments, creating notes, working with the transportation proposals, going again back through the different documents, the freight order, the forwarding order, the freight unit, and what each one of them meant. I know it's not easy to go through an entire process like this in an hour and a half or even 2 hours, as this can take up to a week to do. And there's a lot more other details that we can go through. I'm not sure, Leandro, if you're still there. Maybe we can now show them either how the production login works, or if you think we could probably go into a CCP and show them that.
I don't know, maybe we can give the floor to them if they have other questions, or what do they prefer most, if we spend some time in CCP or we show them how to connect to production. So maybe somebody can speak up, maybe Alex or any other person from MovCon. I think the time is already over, but
yes, we could always remain online a bit longer and take a look at something they would want to review. That's not a problem at all. So if anyone, yes, sorry, Leandro.
No, if you give me the floor, I can show to them, and we discuss a little bit the difference between connecting to production and training, because I think they are a little bit confused, because we show to them how to connect to different systems, and maybe it seems a little bit difficult for them to, or they think it's going to be a little bit difficult once we go live. So maybe we can show to them how to connect.
Sure thing. I think Alexander has just unmuted himself.
Okay, it's not just because of confusion. The issue is I tried myself to enroll in the system on Friday to train Musio, and I was not able. A lot of error messages are coming. So we need to work with Babacar's team to resolve these issues. So we need somebody to support us to start, let me say, this system to be live. Because every time there are some questions, and if any one error message is coming, so we are just, our hands are tied. We blocked. Even to upload the Excel file, it's also showing error message.
But Alex, are you talking about training environment or production? Because if I'm not mistaken, production will...
No, I'm talking about both, training and production. We tried to do both sides, but it was really difficult. So we need, but we discussed with Babacar, we will have assistance, and we will work with his team to resolve this issue.
Okay, because production will be open starting from the 21st, right? So right now we can see the links, but I don't think it's accessible yet, right? So what we can show to you is how to reach those links, but the system itself will be accessible starting from next Monday, from the 21st of January.
But still, we have a lot of questions, even with regards to the scope of work. The SOW which you presented us as a sample, let me say, it shows 10 different forwarding orders and 10 different freight orders number, which are not required at all. And we discussed before, we don't need at all this possibility to choose the best route. We are not dictating to the vendors this. This will be after the purchase order will be and contract will be awarded. So then we will see which route will be used by the vendor.
Okay, so Leandro, do you still want to log in?
I don't know. I mean, following Alex comments, I mean, we are using, I think, the oldest environment, the one we use for training, and I'm sure that the ones you've used for UBT, it has been more updated. So the changes you requested lately, I mean, from December onwards, the counterpart for you to discuss if that's going to be final and available from the 21st is more Babacar and Nicole and Tim. So what we are showing to you is just an overview of how to navigate through the system, how to reach the scope of work, just as a refresher of what we showed to you in December. But the latest details about the different fields that will be available from next Monday onwards, I think the proper people to ask those questions is going to be more the project team, Nicole, Babacar, and so on. Okay, and I don't know, Brian, if you give me the floor, I can show to them the part for production. Otherwise, I don't know.
Sure thing. Let's see. Oleg has, I think, something else to mention.
Okay, at the beginning of the training, you told that the transportation planner will create events on behalf of TCC or PCC. No, we are not doing this because we are not involved in their internal contract with the carriers. And the LOA, we don't have any visibility to upload. And I told before this issue. So all events for the LOA will not be uploaded because we are not in the control of the contract for the TCC. And we have no visibility, neither information from TCC, how the contract is processing.
Okay, Oleg, I know you mentioned that as well back in New York. You mentioned that to us. But eventually, this is the role of the TM planner allows this to occur. Now, the fact that you do it or not in your real life scenarios is something that we're unaware of. I know that now it seems to be a different story, but you're saying it very clearly that you're not going to do that. So in the sense, the LOA scenarios, you would never be submitting events on behalf of the TCC, of the Troops Contributing Country then?
Yes,
you would never submit events, okay?
Yes, we will never submit events, and we don't need to confuse management with this message. Because if management will be advised that TM planner has responsibility to upload this event, it will be not the truth. It will be not correct. That's it from my side.
All right, Oleg. Well, thank you. We take note of that also. I know we did take note of it already in New York, but still, in a sense, the TM planner's role is to do that exactly in that specific scenario. But we will we'll forward that message, of course, when we talk again with Babacar and see where that is now. So, Leandro, if you want just to close the session, I can just give you the floor and you can show the login to production.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Let me find you here. And now it's all yours.
All right. So, yeah. So let me share my screen. So you should all see my desktop now. So I just use the connected to the login.umoja.un.org. Okay, the usual dashboard we usually connect to is the same one we use for training. But for training, we usually connect to either SAP GUI or the non-production. But for production, you will use the Umoja production link. All right, and in here is where you can already see the links for TM. Okay, so those are already there, but so you will need to answer your security questions. Okay, and as you can see here, you already have the links for TM. So basically, the one that gives you access to the to the portal, right, to the NetWeaver business client is the TM. So this link here will open access to for planners to do the planning, to do the upload. So basically, this is the link you will be using to connect to TM to do the Excel upload, to do the planning, and so on. At this stage, if I click, I can access yet, so no need to worry about this, the client system. So for production, that will be the way forward. You will reach this page, and once you click into TM, starting from next week, you will connect to the portal, to the TM portal, where you can do the upload and do the planning. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the different clients, different links, and so on. So you just go to the production portal, and in here you have the option to connect to ECC, to the portal, and one of the links will be the one for TM. Okay, and that's for production. So I don't know, Alex, if you have discussed with Babacar that you will have access to a different system just for testing, but I'm referring today as how to connect to TM for production. That will be available starting from next Monday. All right. So, Brian, that was it for on how to connect to production.
All right, Leandro, thank you. And again, I know we did go over 9 minutes, but any other questions, now would be the time to ask. We can continue to answer some of the questions you may have. Since we arrived to the end of this session, we've covered everything we wanted to cover so far, which was the review of the end-to-end process. We took a look at the Excel upload sheet. We also reviewed what the forwarding order and freight units looked like and meant in terms of concept, how to generate freight orders manually by generating transportation proposals, the difference between the XWorks Incoterm and the DAP Incoterm, which were the LOA and non-LOA scenario, and then the submission of events. So basically, if there are any questions, thank you, Diana, for the comment in the chat. I'm making sure that I'm not missing anyone. It's good to see you here. I hope you all had a happy holidays, since we really didn't have a chance to talk before this, and Happy New Year to all. I see a total of 10 attendees, so please, if there are any questions before we close the session, we're still here. Thank you, John. Always a pleasure to have you around. Thank you for your nice words. So basically, if no one has a question, I will just close the session now. Thank you, guys. Please feel free to reach out to us. Any suggestions in terms of what the system does or how it looks, please feel free to to tell the team in New York that you want it to look differently. I wish I could change it myself, but we can't. We're just here to teach you how the process works. And thank you all. So I'm going to close the session now, and enjoy the rest of your day.